Universidad San Sebastián, Portmonte, Chile. He earned a bachelor's degree in elementary education from Universidad de los Lagos and a master's in applied linguistics from the Fiol Catholic University of Chile. He was a Humphrey Fellow in the Peabody College at Vanderbilt University between 2023 and 2024. He has experience teaching EFL to students ranging in ages from early childhood to the university level. His work in teacher education focuses on preparing EFL teachers in the area of teaching English to young learners and field experiences. His research interests include teaching methods and teacher education in EFL settings. Dr. Borga, welcome, and please take it away.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Give me a second because I'm going to share my presentation. And please confirm that you can see my presentation and that is okay. Is it okay?
It is okay, Eric. Yeah, you can put it on the slide show mode. We kind of, I don't know if you can, but
just give me a second. I think that I can do that.
If you can come down or like bring your mouse down a little bit more. Yep.
Yeah, that's a slideshow mode.
Can you see that or no yet?
Not yet.
Okay, but what I can do is, give me a second. I can share that as a PDF document. Give me a second. That's better. I had the second option because most of the time, you know, with
if you're using a Mac system, yeah.
Yes. The Mac system sometimes is not. Okay. Sure. That one.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Give me this here, and it says presentation. Is that okay? Better?
Yeah, it is perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much for the introduction and for the invitation. As the presenter said, I'm an elementary teacher. And I've been working in teacher education for more than 15 years. And what is interesting is it's a holiday today here in Chile. It's the Naval Day. So I'm at home, and that's better because I'm not at university, you know, with the noise there. And we also are in the same time zone. So that is also wonderful. It's 9:15 or 9 each here. So it's truly an honor to be here with you today as part of this global educational symposium. I would like to begin by thanking the organizers for creating spaces like this one, spaces where people from different disciplines, experiences, and backgrounds can come together to reflect on one of the most important questions of our time. How do we help young people participate meaningfully in shaping the future of our world? Today, I would like to speak about youth, language, opportunity, identity, and voice. More specifically, I would like to reflect on how learning another language, particularly English in global context, can become much more than an academic subject. It can become a pathway towards participation, a pathway towards connection, and ultimately a pathway towards helping young people see themselves as contributors to global conversations. This topic is deeply personal to me. As someone who grew up in southern Chile, learning English as a foreign language, I understand many of the insecurities and fears young people experience when trying to communicate beyond their immediate contexts. But also, I understand something else. Young people have extraordinary ideas, perspectives, and stories that deserve to be heard globally. And today I would like to explore how education can help make that possible. I would like to begin with a story. A few years ago, I worked with a student in Chile. For the purpose of this talk, I will call him Rodrigo. Rodrigo was intelligent, thoughtful, and hardworking, but he rarely spoke in English class. Whenever students were asked to share opinions or participate in communicative activities, he would look down, avoid eye contact, and remain silent. And whenever I encouraged him to participate, he would quietly say the same sentence: "My English is not good." It was not laziness, it was not lack of interest, it was fear. The fear of making mistakes, the fear of embarrassment, the fear of not being understood. One day, I asked students to create a short video in English about an issue that mattered to them personally. Rodrigo chose to speak about mental health among teenagers and the importance of emotional support systems in schools. Later, I discovered that he had recorded the video 10 different times before submitting it. 10 attempts, 10 moments of doubt, 10 moments of deciding whether his voice was worth sharing. And later, he told me something I have never forgotten. He asked, "What if people don't understand me?" And I remember pausing after hearing that question, because beneath that question was something much deeper than concern about pronunciation or grammar. What he was really asking was this: does my voice matter enough to be heard? Eventually, he submitted the video, and we watched the video in class. Something remarkable happened. Well, his English was not perfect. There were mistakes, there were pauses, there were moments of hesitation, but his message was thoughtful, honest, powerful, and in that moment, Rodrigo was not simply completing an assignment. He was participating in a conversation larger than himself. He was speaking to the world. And that moment reminded me of something Paulo Freire, a Brazilian educator, once said: education does not change the world. Education changes people. People change the world. That experience changed the way I think about education and language learning, because it made me realize something very important. The ultimate goal of learning English is not perfection, it is access. Access to participation, access to opportunity, access to dialogue, and access to voice. Rodrigo's story resonates deeply with me because, in many ways, I was also that student. I grew up in southern Chile, far away from the international academic and professional spaces I later entered. For many years, English felt distant from my reality, sometimes intimidating. Like many students learning a foreign language, I worried about pronunciation. I worried about grammar. I worried about making mistakes in front of others. And perhaps more importantly, I did not imagine that someone from my context could eventually participate in global conversations. At that time, English felt like a subject, like a school subject, not as a bridge to the world. But over time, something changed. I began to understand that language learning was not about becoming someone else. It was about gaining another way to connect, communicate, and contribute. That realization transformed my life. Over the years, I became an English teacher, then a teacher, educator, and researcher. I had opportunities to collaborate internationally, publish academic work, and participate in global educational communities. One particularly meaningful experience was participating in the Humphrey Fellowship Program at Vanderbilt University in the United States during 2023 and 2024. In April 2024, I had the opportunity to visit the Community College of Baltimore County for a week. And that was a great experience because I met wonderful people there. Rebecca, I hope she's there. I saw Christine is there. And of course, Guillermo and Professor Azar. And that experience reinforced something powerful. Voices from Latin America matter internationally. Voices from Chile matter internationally. Young people from local communities can participate globally. And when students begin seeing English not as an impossible barrier, but as a bridge, incredible things begin to happen. This brings us to a larger question. Why does English matter today? And I believe the answer goes far beyond employment or academic achievement, which of course are really important. In today's interconnected world, participation increasingly depends on communication, and communication often depends on language. For millions of young people around the world, English has become one of the principal languages through which global conversations occur. Whether we are talking about science, technology, education, social advocacy, or digital collaboration, English often functions as a gateway. And like a gateway, it can either open doors or reinforce barriers. But I want to emphasize something very important. Learning English should never mean abandoning our identities, cultures, or languages. The goal is not to sound like someone else. The goal is to communicate our own stories, perspectives, and realities to the world. English should amplify identities, not erase them. And this is especially important for youth because young people already have powerful ideas. Education simply helps them express those ideas more confidently and globally. When we think about global participation, we must also acknowledge an uncomfortable reality. Not everyone enters global conversations equally. Around the world, access to opportunities remains deeply unequal. Some young people grow up with access to technology, international networks, high quality education, and multilingual environments. Others do not. Some young people are encouraged to express themselves confidently and from an early age. Others grew up believing their voices are not important enough to be heard. And these inequalities shape participation. They shape confidence, they shape access, and they shape who gets heard globally. At the same time, however, we are living in an extraordinary historical moment. Technology has made forms of global participation possible that previous generations could never imagine. Young people can collaborate internationally without leaving their communities. For example, today's Symposium. They can create digital content, share ideas, build movements, raise awareness, and connect across borders. The challenge for educators, institutions, and communities is helping ensure that these opportunities become more accessible, inclusive, and human-centered. I believe we need to rethink how we define success for young people in global connected generation. Too often, Success is measured only through performance, competition, or perfection. But global participation requires much more than technical skills. It requires empathy, adaptability, communication, resilience, collaboration, and confidence. The same is true in language learning. If students learn perfect grammar but never use their voice, what have we really accomplished? A global voice is not defined by accent. It is not defined by perfection. A global voice is the ability to participate meaningfully in conversations that matter. And when students begin seeing themselves not simply as learners but as contributors, everything changes. They begin participating more actively, sharing ideas more confidently, and imagining themselves different. This symposium focuses on youth as catalyst for positive transformation, resilience, innovation, and hope. And I truly believe young people are already leading change across the world. We see it everywhere. Young people are advocating for climate action. They are raising awareness about mental health. They are creating digital platforms to support communities. They are organizing social movements. They are challenging injustice. And they are building new forms of collaboration that previous generations could not have imagined. What inspires me most is that many young people are not waiting for permission to participate. They are already participating. They are already contributing. They are already shaping conversations globally. The question is whether institutions, educators, and communities are helping support that participation. Because young people do not become change makers automatically. They become change makers when they are given opportunities to develop confidence, agency, and voice. And language, whether through English or other forms of communication, language is one of the tools that can help make that participation possible. When young people feel empowered to share ideas, tell stories, ask questions, and connect across cultures, remarkable things begin to happen. They begin seeing themselves not only as students, but as contributors of society. So, what does empowerment actually look like in educational spaces? I believe empowering classrooms are not simply places where information is delivered. They are spaces where voices emerge, spaces where students feel, see, hear, are respected, and are capable of contributing. In my own work as a teacher educator, one of the most important ideas that we discussed is that teachers do not simply teach content, they create possibilities. The beliefs educators hold profoundly shape what happens in classrooms. If students feel constantly judged, they become silent. If they feel their ideas are unimportant, they disengage. But when students feel safe enough to participate, they ask questions and take risks. Confidence then begins to grow, and voices begin to emerge. This is why meaningful communication matters so much. Students should not memorize information, they should create, collaborate, tell stories, discuss real world issues, develop projects connected to their communities, especially to their own context, and reflect on ideas that matter to them personally. Because when learning becomes meaningful, engagement transforms. Students begin realizing that they have something valuable to contribute. And often, that realization changes much more than academic performance. It changes identity. One of the most powerful aspects of our current moment is that technology has expanded what participation can look like. As I already mentioned, today young people can connect internationally without leaving their communities. They collaborate across countries, share experiences digitally, create content, and join conversations, and learn from people whose reality may be completely different from their own. And that is, for example, what is happening today with the group of students who are visiting Chile. Um, and they are enjoying, right, with discussions about communities. Technology has created extraordinary opportunities for connection, but technology alone is not enough. Students also need encouragement, mentorship, confidence, and really important spaces where they feel their participation matters. This is where community engagement becomes especially important because learning becomes far more powerful when it moves beyond classroom walls. When students connect learning to real communities and authentic audiences, education gains relevance. Education gains purpose, and voice develops through connection. Community engagement helps create bridges between local experiences and global conversations, between individual stories and collective understanding, and between education and social impact. Learning to communicate, especially across languages, cultures, or unfamiliar spaces, requires vulnerability. It requires the willingness to make mistakes, to feel uncomfortable, to risk being misunderstood. And that can be incredibly difficult, especially for young people, especially today's generations. I know this personally. Even today, I still experience moments of insecurity when speaking internationally. I still make mistakes, grammar mistakes in English, pronunciation mistakes in English. And I think that that is important to acknowledge because sometimes students imagine that confident communicators never struggle. But the truth is that growth rarely happens without vulnerability. One of the most important lessons I learned throughout my own journey was that my communication improved not because I stopped making mistakes, but because I continued participating despite them. That is resilience. And resilience is essential not only in education, but also in leadership, collaboration, and social transformation. Voice requires courage. Participation requires courage. And one of the greatest responsibilities educators and mentors have in helping young people is helping young people develop that courage, helping them understand that imperfection does not make their voice less valuable. Despite the challenges we faced globally, I remained profoundly hopeful because when I work with young people, I see creativity, I see empathy, I see resilience, I see imagination, and I see a generation that genuinely wants to contribute positively to the world. So I often ask myself, what becomes possible when young people truly believe their voices matter? Imagine a generation of young people who feel confident participating globally, young people who collaborate across cultures, who advocate for their communities internationally, who use communication not only for professional advancement, but also for empathy, understanding, and social impact. That future is possible, but it requires educational spaces that value participation, humanity, and belonging. And sometimes all it takes is one opportunity, one supportive classroom, one encouraging mentor, or one moment of belief to completely change the trajectory of a young person's life. I know this because educators change my life and my own vision. And so I return to Rodrigo, to that moment of hesitation, to that question: what if people don't understand me? I think about many young people around the world who carry similar fears. How many remain silent because they believe they are not ready, not enough, not fluent enough, not confident enough. And I think about what happened when Rodrigo was finally given the opportunity to speak. He discovered something transformative. He discovered that his voice mattered. He discovered that communication is not about perfection, it is about courage. It is not about connection, and um, it is about connection, it is about participation. Rodrigo did not need perfect English. He needed opportunity. And once he had that opportunity, he used his voice. I believe our responsibility as educators, institutions, communities, and global partners is to help create more opportunities like that, to create spaces where young people feel empowered to participate, where education becomes access, where classroom becomes possible, and where young people begin seeing themselves not simply as learners, but as global voices capable of creating positive change. That was my presentation. It was shorter, I guess, but thank you very much. And I'm open now to continue discussing right with questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Any questions? Oh, I guess Antilla has one.
No, I would like to
Oh,
personally thank you, Eric, for everything, for our collaboration. And then we are so delighted to have you today as our first speaker opening up this wonderful day and then this wonderful topic. We are truly honored. So thank you so much. Go ahead, Aisha. Sorry for that interruption.
do we have any questions, comments? I have to be honest, as an international background person, I found a lot of myself during your talk, like how you learn English as a second language, you live completely different country. Now we are in US. That's basically our mainly speaking language, how people hesitate. And as you said, I find myself like, oh my God, I said that, but it grammatically, it's not really correct. What did I do? That was in front of the dean or the provost or someone else. What do they think about me now? Because I cannot even speak correctly. I think that's very common for international students and professionals. So one thing I would like to ask, what challenges do English learners commonly face in Chile? Like, what do you see with your
Yes.
students?
Well, English is a foreign language in Chile, so we need to differentiate English as a foreign language and English as a second language, right? Foreign language means that we don't have a community where we could practice English. Well, maybe we can discuss that today because you know that through technology today we have more access to native speakers. But the challenge we have here today is that we don't have that specific community or that space where we could use English, right? Um, our program or our national curriculum, like the school curriculum, it says that English is mandatory taught from grade 5 till grade 12. And throughout their elementary and high school education, students should gain, right, or achieve B1 level, that is intermediate level of English. But the reality is that when they finish high school, their level of English is really basic. So for example, in my context, I work with future teachers of English. So we train teachers of English and we received students whose English is really basic. So our program develops their academic competencies, the English competencies in 5 years, right? So that is one thing. The second has to do with the Chileans in terms of our personality. You know that Chile is a very long and narrow country, and it is south of Chile. So we have like our natural barriers. We have the Andes, right? We have the ocean. So for many years, Chile was really isolated. Um, and and our personality has developed in a way that we are not that social as, for example, other Latinos in general, right? For example, if we compare Chileans with Argentinians, they are really close to us, or Colombians, right, or Brazilians, right? Their personality is different. We are shyer, right? We are not that good at talking, so sometimes that is also a skill that we need to develop with our students. So and the third aspect has to do with English per se, because English is a different language from Spanish. Spanish is a transparent language, though in terms of grammar, it is really complex because morphologically it is more advanced than English, right? But in terms of pronunciation, right, English is not that transparent. So we have 12 vowels in English, for example, vowel sounds. In Spanish, we only have like 5 vowels and they sound the same. So it doesn't matter in which position of the word or where, in the letter in which part of the word is that vowel, the sound is the same. So sometimes learning right English is more difficult because of that as well. So at least 3 issues there.
Thank you. So I would like to add one more. You said, some people are more shy than the others. I can see that in my classes too. Some of the international students, they are like, even if you ask them a question, you say, who wants to volunteer to come on the board to solve? Some will just raise their hand. Some will just sit there, even though they might be the only person who already solved the problem. So I guess then maybe we have to think about like how can schools create more inclusive environments for multilingual learners? So any
Yeah.
comments on that?
Yes, in our country, and that's what Professor Azar right mentioned while she was um, online. Right, she mentioned that yesterday they visited an indigenous group here, and they will probably talk to you more about that in the future when they arrive to the United States. But we do have here in Chile a diverse groups in terms of indigenous people, but we haven't given them the space at schools that they needed, or at least in the past, we didn't give them the specific space for them to develop their own languages. So we do have different languages that are not currently spoken in the country. And in the classroom, and we have also received students from, or people in general from other countries, right?
Mhm.
And so what we can see in the classrooms today is that we can see a more or a diversity of cultures in the classroom. But in Chile, we don't have many, programs that tackle that specific issue. It's different from United States. While I was there, for example, in United States, and you observed in the primary class when you saw students from different nationalities who were there, multilingual learners. In Chile, it's more difficult to find that. But in general, I could say that we need to integrate culture as part of our national curriculum. That is key. That is to say, we need to invite students to talk more about their own cultures, and we need to give, right, their own traditions or their own ideals, right, more space in the classroom, because sometimes we have a curriculum that is really strict, or with specific topics that sometimes are not that essential for students. So I think that that is also important to consider.
Thank you very much. I don't have anything else to do. Anyone else who wants to add more? I had more questions, but you literally answered everything while you were going through your presentation. I'm like, oh.
Mhm.
Any
I
other
just would,
questions? Yes,
yes,
go ahead.
I just would like to say that today is the World Day for Cultural Diversity, according to TESOL. I'm part of TESOL International. So I think that that is also a space for reflection for all of us, right? I think that cultural diversity is really important. In my context, I am studying my PhD program right now, and I'm specializing in integrating content or methodologies in the classroom. And in that specific methodology, the role of culture is essential. So for me, the inclusion of culture or ideas connected to cultural elements in the classroom is key in order to develop, right, students who can talk more about, right, different topics. And especially this symposium where we want to talk about youth, right, their role. I think that we first of all need to value or um, pay attention to our students' own background, and because based on their own background, based on their own experiences, based on their own, family issues, or cultural elements, they will have a voice, and they will probably start discussing or being part of different discussions. So that is also really important. And I wanted to say that today's in particular is really important, right?
Thank you. And
I just wanted to thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for your presentation. I think it is so important as we continue healing, and as young people continue healing from COVID pandemic, that the space that you're discussing is more important than ever. I think trying to carve out space, and at CCBC, we had a learning community years ago supported by Dr. Dolan, and faculty members have learned these mindfulness practices that we can integrate, and it can be a very short amount of time during a classroom experience where students can sit with some topic, or there are multiple writing practices, and I'm sure you're aware of these. but creating that space. I just wanted to thank you for talking about that as part of a national curriculum, because I just think I think it's central, as you see it, to what we're doing, the work we're doing to support our young people. And it's so encouraging to hear how you're talking about youth and how much they have, and their voice is so important. So I just wanted to thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mary?
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Dr. Burgos, for showing your vulnerability. In fact, just earlier this month, we had in the School of Math and Science, I teach mathematics, by the way. In the School of Math and Science, we had this Meet Your Mentor session where students were able to ask questions of the professors. And one of the things, that amazed them was that, they were glad to see that we were humans, right? And we make mistakes and we have to try and, do things over and over again, or take many years to complete, doctorates or whatever it is. And one student, he was like, I've done this course before, and this was a science course, but also some students repeat courses in mathematics. And it was like, it really encourages them when they hear that we've had struggles and that we persevered, to encourage them with their classes to say, well, okay, I can persevere too. Of course, they could take other paths, but it's really a good thing for us to really show vulnerability. I know in my math classes, occasionally I make mistakes. I'm human. So I'm glad actually when the mistakes occur, I don't do it intentionally. However, I am glad when it happens, because sometimes students think that we don't make mistakes. And we do, right? We are also human. So I appreciated that side that you showed today. And I'm also from Trinidad, West Indies. So I had some um, similar experiences like you do. And sometimes, yes, we do wonder if we're enough in another culture and that sort of thing. So thanks again for sharing that. Vulnerability. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. But yes, and especially when you learn a second or foreign language, um, errors are really important, right? And when I was trained as a teacher back in the days, right, errors were not that important. So most teachers corrected us, right? Their methodology was like that, and that was a different time, and that is okay. But today, right, the role of error in the classroom is essential. And we need to value errors, especially when they are learning, right, a language, because it means that they are trying, right, to communicate. And especially in this context and the topic of this presentation, the topic of this symposium has to do with how, right, youth, right, can participate more, or how they are participating. So thank you very much. And well, tomorrow, Professor Guillermo Gibbons and Professor Azar will visit our university here, my university here. So I also have the opportunity to talk to your students, I guess, or well, students from CCBC who are visiting our country. As I mentioned, this is a recess week for us, but we gather a group of students who will be participating with them, and we have created activities for them to participate there. And I think that that is also important for your students and for our students, right? For youth, right? To talk, young people, they can change, or they can change ideas about their own cultures.
Thank you. Mary, do you have another question? You have your
No,
hand.
that I thought I had lowered my hand. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments, questions, everybody? If you don't have any, please give another round of applause to Professor Burgos. Let me do myself too. And thank you.
Thank you again for this invitation.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, everyone. Looks wonderful so far. Thank you for getting us started with such a wonderful presentation. As I said, it's been an honor to have you part of our symposium. I will transition into our second speaker, a colleague, a dear colleague of mine. I'm very honored to introduce Miss Nelly Parleda. She is a career higher education administrator who has held leadership roles at 2- and 4-year institutions in the Maryland University system since 1991 in areas such as academic advising, admissions, recruitment, and international student services. She is currently the assistant director and the principal designated school official in the International Student Service Office at the Community College of Baltimore County. She completed her undergraduate studies in business at Howard University and a master's degree in business administration at the University of Maryland, College Park, where she completed all coursework for a PhD in education policy. She's an avid African American historian and lecturer. Her professional passions also include helping students to discover their unique gifts and talents so they can design rewarding careers. I'm very happy and then honored to introduce a dear colleague, Miss Nelly Parleda. Welcome, Miss Nelly.
Thank you, Professor Intella. You are so kind and so generous to extend this offer for me to speak with my colleagues. It is a privilege. And I want to say to Professor Burgos, 2 thank yous. Number 1, thank you for going first. How difficult and scary that is. And then as you were speaking, my second thank you is over a quote that you made. You said, English should amplify identities, not erase them. You can't tell by looking at my last name, but hopefully by looking at my face, that my family are African Americans from the southern part of the United States, which means that I don't sound like many people in the United States, specifically not those that I work with at the Community College of Baltimore County. And I am proud that even when I attempt to speak English, what they hear are the voices of my ancestors. Most recently, I was talking with my first cousin, and she shared with me that when I hang up the phone, that I sound exactly like my aunt, her mother-in-law. And this was my favorite aunt. Don't tell the other aunts. But this was joyous to me to know that her voice still lives on in me. So yes, while I attempt to learn English, my goal will never be to lose the ethnicity and identities that form my voice. So thank you. Thank you again. Well, Professor Intella, here's my chance to be nervous and see if the technology is going to work, right? Let's see. Let's see what happens. Okay. Let's see if this is going to work. Okay, my hope is that you are looking at.
We can see the slides, but again, same directions. Oh, that's it. That's perfect.
Yay! Okay, that's the second scariest moment, right, Professor Burgos? Number 1, that you have to go number first, and number 2, that the presentation won't work. We keep hope alive. The name of this presentation is Hopes. So again, thank you, genuinely thank you for this opportunity to talk about our students, about international students, about their persistence, resilience, and hope. And again, as Professor Burgos was speaking, I thought to myself, learning language is an act of resistance, not only resilience and hope. And I hope to share that same thought with you in my presentation today. So my presentation is International Student Resilience and Hope. I chose this global atlas because I really think that our students persist despite sometimes having the weight of the world on their shoulders. I took the time to take a look at two words in this title, which are the words hope and the words resilience. And I gathered some data from our own students, from our own F1 students. You won't be able to run a regression analysis through it. It wasn't approved by an international review board, but I did talk with 10 of our own students to get their responses to two questions, one on hope and one on resilience. Then, of course, I hit the research literature, and what we learned, I hope, from both the research literature and the students will be informative in terms of how CCBC in particular responds to the needs of this population of students. Okay, so I confess to responding to Professor Intella's initial response with some cynicism because I'm supposed to talk about hope and resilience among young people. I'm old, no. I made the point that as I made my notes, hope, sorry. Okay. Gee. All right. The technology on my phone is going to betray me. Stay with me. So sorry. You won't give up. Not on a position. Okay. It's coming up now. Here we go. All right. As has been said, I am the Assistant Director of International and Immigrant Student Services here at the Community College of Baltimore County. And I've held this position for almost 12 years. Actually, next month will be my 12th anniversary with the college. But despite my level of experience in working with both domestic and international students, when Professor Johnny asked me to present today on the issue of hope and resilience for F1 students, I paused. In the interest of transparency, I'm normally this person that students meet with when they're in crisis. I jokingly call myself the out man. No, literally, I've made a career of the last 35 years of meeting with students who are coming out, flunking out, stressing out, out of money, out of status, out of excuses for not persisting in graduating on time. In fact, I personally want to thank the 45 members, 45 members of the graduating F1 class of 2020 who haven't seen me since mandatory new student orientation. It means they've had a relatively uneventful experience at CCBC. So when Professor Johnny asked me to speak about hope and resilience about F1 students, I started to tell her, I don't know anything about that, but I do. And if nothing else, I'm extremely respectful of moments like this and deeply honored when I'm asked to present. So as a good graduate student, I soon began to think about my research methodology and a question for rising to the task. First, I hit the research literature, then I decided to ask the students themselves. And then I was able to reflect upon a recent conversation that I had with six visitors from Education USA, international counselors who are paid by the State Department to literally recruit students to US colleges and universities. So I'm about to share what I learned. I'll start with providing just some background data. Some of you are probably overly familiar with this, but here we go. The fact that in the United States, of course, F1 international students are credited with bringing diverse cultures, experiences to the academic community. They demonstrate resilience every day by adapting to American culture and everything from adjusting to our food. Lord, I've heard stories about how horrible American food is. Our sense of time, Americans stand by the microwave, tapping their fingers, going, hurry up. Our greetings, one of my students from Jamaica said, why do Americans ask you how you are? Because they say, how are you? And keep walking and don't wait to hear the response. And our odd ways of connecting interpersonally and professionally, our international students make adjustments every moment is not an exaggeration by being here and demonstrating how resilient they are. When we talk about F1 international students, of course, terms like acculturation and culture shock come up. Acculturation is that time, that adjustment to adjusting to your new culture. And culture shock describes those moments when you simply don't understand the people around you. So we salute the F1 international students in the US, in Maryland, and at CCBC who make these adjustments and show resilience every day. Move forward. Come on, here we go. So a little data, right? Because that's what good graduate students do. Of course, you probably know in the United States, there are more than 1.5 million individuals holding an F1 visa that's designed for study only. And in Maryland, there are more than 26,000 F1 international students. And at CCBC, proudly, there are 571 of them at my last count. Whenever we have to advocate for new resources for this group or explain their needs, often we talk about money. Thankfully, groups like NAFSA and IEE have tabulated the data for us. They've shown us that nationally, the 1.2 million F1 international students contribute more than $42 billion to the U.S. economy and create over 355,000 jobs. We also saw this fall where recent declines in the, I'll just describe it as the atmosphere of international ed, have led to a loss of more than $1.1 billion and 23,000 jobs because of reduced enrollment of F1 students. In Maryland alone, another 9,000 jobs are created by the 26,000 students that are with us, contributing more than $1 billion to the Maryland economy. And so we keep it personal. At CCBC, 32 of us are employed because of the 571 F1 students who are with us, and they contribute over $7 million to our coffers. Continuing with the contribution of students in terms of dollars and numbers, here at CCBC, many of our students, roughly 77%, this data is showing, are from from Nepal. Our next largest sending country is Nigeria, followed by Pakistan, India, and Vietnam. Our students hail from over 56 countries across the globe, but our largest populations are from those 5 countries. More than half of CCBC's F1 students are female, and this becomes important when we take a look at the literature and stressors around resilience and persistence. Some of the research indicates that our female undergraduate students are struggling at different levels of acculturative stress and deserve specialized support. On to what they study when they're with us at CCBC, you'll see that more than half of our students are nursing majors. Yes, some of them have to get the talk from me that you're not a nurse. Not when we're in Math 083 for the 3rd time and repeating English and running from the TEAS test. Okay, and they don't have the empathy and they don't like blood and they don't like vulnerable people. But my point is, nursing remains a popular major at CCBC, followed by business management, computer science, and other IT fields. Further, to describe the F1 students at CCBC, we enroll as a college. I just saw this data. A third of all the F1 students who are enrolled at a community college level in the state of Maryland. Go CCBC. The recent data that I saw was a little more than 1,600 F1 students at the community college level. And as some of you may know, explaining community college to international and even domestic parents is sometimes a hard sell when they're not familiar, don't see the benefits, and see us as 13th grade, which we are not. CCBC students come to us prepared to pay 2.5 times the tuition rate of domestic students. And due to federal regulations, they're not eligible for federal financial aid, and they may not work off campus without permission from the federal government. In other words, you don't even obtain an F1 visa unless you can demonstrate to the US government that you have sufficient funds to pay for 1 year of college. At CCBC, that number is $26,411. So these are investments that families have made, as I like to say, both paying and praying. You'll see why I say it in that order when you see some of their responses for why they persist and keep going. Also wanted to highlight some national data around overall persistence rates for bachelor's degree seekers. This data, the top data by the National Center for Education Statistics, is not broken out by domestic versus international. It says globally, 64% of all first-time baccalaureate seeking undergraduates require at least 6 years to complete their undergraduate degree. All right, parents, we keep paying and praying, and that these numbers, while not always disaggregated for international students, we found some data at individual institution levels that show similar persistence rates around 50 to 65%, again, taking more than over 6 years to complete a baccalaureate degree. So as we watch our students stay with us at CCBC and earn second and third associate's degrees because finance is keeping them from transferring on to their four-year institution, yeah, that represents a family persisting, a family with resilience and hope that finances will be different and that monies will be available through scholarships and other means. On to what the research said about how and why F1 students persist and are hopeful. This 2019 research by Young Kim indicated that after a survey of 322 international students, the commonalities that they saw around students who were struggling, those who were having difficulty, who were experiencing what they defined as a cultural stress, this happened more often in older students, female students, undergraduate students, and students who lived with their families, those who lived longer in the US than 2 years. This exactly describes the CCBC population of undergraduate students. Many of our students are adult and returning learners. More than half you saw are females. Of course, they're pursuing the first part of a baccalaureate degree with us as undergraduates. 70% of our F1 students choose CCBC because a family member recommended them. Um, I often tell all of my managers, I say, well, no one ever heard of Catonsville from Kathmandu. It was an aunt or uncle who encouraged them to apply to CCBC. So as we see these as increased factors for difficulty in persisting and being successful, my suggestion, request is that we devote more resources to these mental health services and other ways to help our students adapt and address this stress. Again, researcher Kim and all explained that these high levels of accumulative stress could be documented as directly impacting mental health problems, including depression, anxiety, and alcohol and substance abuse. They also reported common stressors and low English language proficiency and perceived discrimination, which showed up again and again across the research that I looked at. Being singled out for your accent, the way you pronounce different words, or even the fact that you were too silent in class to speak up were contributing factors to this acculturative stress. Common factors to reduce the stress, remember, my talk has to be on hope, included religion and spirituality, social connection and resiliency. And I saw that when I talked to our own students. Again, at research levels, another finding indicated that among 13,000 international students, their unique barriers included language barriers, cultural differences, discrimination, isolation, and difficulties with acculturation. This group, which was largely female, 50% female, these undergraduate international students reported low well-being and high levels of stress than their male and or graduate counterparts. And as a result, this study specifically recommended tailored support for female undergraduate international students, including stress management and mentoring and culturally sensitive mental health services. We have work to do. Finally, I'll share some research by another group, 2022 research by Yvonne Hunter Johnson. Hers was less statistical, a survey of 16 international, non-traditional aged international students, and they were predominantly women. And these students reported negative comments about their accents and abilities, needing to work twice as long to complete assignments. One respondent indicated that she literally completed all of her assignments in her first language and then translated them back to English. But imagine the length of time and resources that it took to do that. Also, we found among female students, this particular group who had also traveled to the US with their family, spent time managing the adjustment strategies of their own families. This study recommended more peer mentors, international student support programs, networking opportunities for international students, and something that I hadn't seen before. Yvonne Hunter Johnson recommended that each student have two peer mentors, one being a domestic student and one being an international student who had been successful in the process. So I've gone on to describe the challenges, the problems with nationally with international students regarding persisting and resilience and hope. You'll be, I think, pleased to see the response of our own students around how they persist and what makes them hopeful. So I conducted an informal face-to-face survey of 10 F1 international students. No, it wasn't a perfect random sampling. No, you couldn't run a regression analysis through it. These were the students who either walked into the International Student Services Office or participated in our recent graduation celebration for them. But here were the questions that I asked them. I asked, what gives you hope? And what makes you persist or persevere as an F1 international student? So I'm going to share verbatim what they said. Respondent number one said, I have to persevere because of my mother. I'm the oldest girl in the family and I have a responsibility. My mother has sacrificed so much for me. Respondent number two says, my family gives me hope. I keep going for my family. Respondent number three said, the idea of my future and being a better person. My parents helped me to keep going. Respondent number four said, my hope is in God, in Jesus Christ. I persist because I promised myself that I would not leave the United States until I have what I need to bring democracy to my country to advocate for minority communities. Respondent number five said, my hope is to break generational poverty, to help my family back home. I persist because of my faith in God and due to the support that I have received from CCBC staff like Dr. Adrienne Washington of Honors and Ms. Liz Smith of International Student Services. I didn't pay them to say that, by the way. Respondent number six said, my hope is that I believe that whatever happens, happens for a reason, and that it will ultimately turn out for my good. I persist because I feel like part of something here. which is Student Government Association, kept me going, and my dad was proud of me. Respondent number seven said, my hope is the upward mobility, career mobility that is possible in the United States. I persist because I want to impact my immediate environment and to match my skills with others on a global level, to go from being a local player to being a global player. Respondent number eight said, I hope to have supportive people around me to motivate me when I am confused. Collaboration, teamwork, and having resources. The ISS department, International Student Services Department, gives hope and encouragement. I didn't pay this respondent either. They groom me to do better. I persist because of my focus to reach my goals, to learn something new in my field. Respondent number nine said, my family gives me hope. I'm trying to do better for my family. Not a lot of people in my family have had this opportunity. In other words, the opportunity to study in the US. And finally, respondent number 10 said this, my educational journey from a not so serious student to a serious student has given me hope. I'm a better person today, and I hope to be a better person tomorrow. I persist because of my mom. I see how she struggled to take care of me. I persist to help my mom and to change things for my family and everyone that I love. I persist because of the support I've gotten from CCBC. I have aunties and uncles. That's the way she describes CCBC staff. I have aunties and uncles here, and I don't want to let them down. What I hope you heard in the 10 voices, or I'll share what I heard in the 10 voices, predominantly female, more from Nepal than any other country because they're largely represented in our demographic, that the primary sources of hope for CCBC F1 students um, is their family, is their family. And the second source of hope are their faith and belief systems. For top reasons to persist, I literally counted 6 instances of these scholars naming family as their primary reason to keep going despite difficulty, financial challenges, language barriers, discrimination. Family was a key reason to persist, followed by support from CCBC staff. I didn't rig that. That's still a good finding. I'll share also when I had a chance to talk with the Education USA advisors regarding why families still continue to choose American education. They were in Maryland for a day and had a chance to visit 4 institutions. We were their only community college. They shared with me that international parents still value an American education for their children, despite rising costs and a recent less than friendly atmosphere towards F1 international students. That many wealthy parents have always planted the seed in their children that American education is a goal and of great value, and that they continue to choose the US despite less expensive options in Europe, Australia, and Canada. And here's where I jokingly say some choose the US despite Americans' television depiction of US history, culture, and everyday life. Baltimore has a bad rap, folks, internationally. So, in thinking about what I learned through the research literature, and more importantly, listening to the voices of 10 of our own students, 8 of whom are graduating, yay, at the end of the month, what should CCBC be doing to increase support, the resilience, and hope of F1 international students? The literature was clear that we should be providing culturally responsive resources for mental health counseling, including group counseling, because the research pointed to a phenomenon I think many of us are familiar with, which is that minority and international students exhibit different help-seeking behavior. They are less likely to meet with an academic advisor. Trust is the issue. Further, CCBC needs to provide spaces that acknowledge the spiritual needs of F1 students because faith and belief were huge factors in resilience and hope. Everything from our quiet spaces where students can go for prayer to acknowledging different holidays and faiths are critical to making sure that this group of students continue to persist and are successful. Acknowledgement of and solutions to address the discrimination faced by international students is real. You saw it across the research and you've witnessed it as a classroom instructor or as an administrator. It's real. And to not address it does a great disservice to our students and our institutions. More support and acknowledgement of F1 international families. Clearly, we owe all the mamas a big hugs, daddies too, don't be jealous. Clearly, our international families need help, need information beyond us sort of shutting the door in their face with, Federal Education Rights to Privacy Act. I can't tell you anything about your student. And while that's a federal regulation, F1 international families do need support and information about adjustment and resources that are available to them. CCBC staff and student connections that foster a sense of belonging are huge. And this is where I make the shout out to Student Government Association, the mentoring and support student services like the Honors Department and the Student Success Initiative. We've seen it in the persistence rates, the grades, the transfer rates. Our international students have soared in at least all three of those programs: Student Government, Honors, and Student Success Initiative. So my closing thoughts are to the 45 F1 international students who are graduating from CCBC this semester. I'm glad you didn't have to meet with me over and over again. You're not part of the half who didn't make it, who weren't out. A special thank you to our mothers, our fathers, our parents. Over and over again, the impact of parents on domestic and international students cannot be overstated. And neither can the hope and resiliency of our young people themselves. As I read the literature, looked at the title, thought about the barriers that these young people faced, I thought about my own experiences with the power of young people. For those of you who are familiar with the American Civil Rights Movement, Martin King did decide to deploy teenagers, right, in the civil rights marches and dared Bull Connor to turn his hoses, water hoses, and dogs on them. And when he did, a nation was appalled that children could be treated to that level of cruelty because of their race. Similarly, because of my background as a Christian, I'm reminded that all of our biblical heroes, David, Daniel, Mary herself, were teenagers, young people, young people, young people. So I take this moment to salute um, all of our youth, all of our students, of course, the international students, because I've worked with them most closely for the last 17 years. But to watch those who persisted despite insurmountable challenges, it it gives me hope. Even cynical, bitter old me who deals with the problems, it gives me hope. I'll share two mom stories that are for one mom story that's from a domestic student. I have a brilliant friend who is a PhD in history. She has a law degree. Um, she did her undergraduate studies in Yale. I see your comments, me too, that we are so proud of the students. And we have been friends we've counted for over 30 years. We met as children. My point is this. She recently shared with me that when her own father lost his job in the 1980s, when the US industry moved the steel mills out of Columbus, Ohio, she was in the first year of her undergraduate studies at Yale. So her father's income, not just losing the job, but when your industry leaves the country, this left her family in such a financial crisis that the response of her mother, sorry if I give this kudo to mothers, the response of her 4'11" African American mother was to write Yale and bargain for 3 years around the amount of tuition that her daughter would pay to earn a baccalaureate degree. So to that I say families are powerful. Domestic families are powerful. International families are powerful. Our students are resilient, and they give me hope. Thank you for this opportunity to share my findings.
Thank you so much. It was an honor. What a story. It's been a wonderful morning. I believe everyone is probably thinking the same way I'm thinking. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Miss Nelly. I'm going to get started with a few questions for you, Miss Nelly, and then open the floor for others to ask questions if they have any. Being part of this wonderful presentation, I come with an international background, and then what comes directly into my mind is a question that maybe everyone is asking now. What are some of the biggest challenges international students are currently facing? And then in that content, what advice would you give students who feel overwhelmed with everything?
First, I would say they are absolutely entitled to their sense of overwhelm. And I am not being political, only factual when I say that F1 students have been under attack under the current presidential administration, from uh, terminations of status in the fall to the recent regulation that is on the books. We're waiting to see the outcome, that F1 students will no longer be admitted for duration of status. I'll explain. Previously, when you were granted an F1 visa, once you arrived in the United States, accepted at a SEVA certified school, a Student and Visitor Information System certified school by the Department of Homeland Security, you could literally remain in the US from learning English all the way through your PhD. The only requirement was that you be enrolled full-time for every semester as you progressed from college to college, program to program, degree to degree. The legislation that we heard about just day before yesterday in meeting with our SEVIS representative, that we think we'll hear something about this fall, would literally require students to return home after completing every degree. You might have heard me say that CCBC's F1 students, more than 70% of our F1 students are transfer students. In other words, they don't pick us first, but they pick us second. We're Cinderella, we leave with the prince. Our enrollment and the enrollment of most Maryland colleges would be impacted by a student who can no longer transfer from us to Coppin, University of Baltimore, College Park, Towson. This student would literally have to go back home and apply for another student visa. It will impact this nation economically, educationally, and for the Midwest schools that rely on graduate students in the STEM fields, we will suffer as a nation educationally and financially, not to speak of what comes to these families who sacrificed once to pay to get you here. Now they have to create those resources again. It will be devastating. So everything from hostile environments where SEVIS records are scrutinized at longer lengths of time, to the very real possibility that students will no longer be able to transfer from institution to institution, the opportunity to engage in optional practical training, which is 1 year of work that follows every degree level, has constantly been questioned and tossed around. Will students continue to have that opportunity to work? And for many students, not only are they gaining work experience, they're earning enough funding to be able to go on to the next degree level. So it has been a fearful time for F1 international students, even those who've been afraid to travel home on spring break for fear that they may not be able to return. It has been a difficult time. I don't think I'm over exaggerating the impact of the changes of this current presidential administration. Thank you for asking.
Thank you so much for sharing that information with us. And then I'll continue with my next question. What gives you hope when working with the young people around the world?
They are absolutely exciting and exhilarating, and they don't give up. I recently spoke to a young woman who told me that she passed the entrance exam for our nursing program, the TEAS test, after her third attempt. I felt demoralized when it took me 2 times to get my driver's license at age 19. I mean, these young people are determined, and it is because there is so much on the line. You heard them say it is for their family, it is for their faith. They don't have the option of quitting. Um, I'm encouraged by their strength. I'm also encouraged when they finally find their gift and their calling. Nursing faculty, don't be mad at me. When we do sit down and do the free career interest inventory that is on our website, and I get them to talk to their favorite aunt, the aunt that the cousin says I look like, said I was a teacher and I went off and got 2 degrees in business. Anyway, and so one of my favorite moments as an academic advisor is to sit with the student and really examine do a few interest inventories, have a conversation with that aunt, not your parents, they want you to leave, I want you to graduate, to find out their real gift and calling. And then the happiest of all moments is when students do email, call back, come back. I get to see wedding pictures, baby pictures, their new house, their first job. Yeah, it's been worth it. It's been 35 years of worth it for this old cynic. It's been worth it.
Thank you, Ms. Nail. I'm going to finalize with one more question and then open the floor for others if they have any questions for you. If you could give one piece of advice to young people who want to make a difference globally, what would that be?
Start with introspection. Each one of us has a gift and a talent. We shouldn't be molded by other people's career expectations. I agree with Professor Burgos when he explained we each have an individual gift and voice. I always tell students I couldn't sing like the American singer Whitney Houston. No chance. My son says to me, Mom, you have a great speaking voice, but singing, I'm like, stop. These people you gave birth to, they try to take your life. But anyway, the point is to start with their wonderful gift. There is a picture in my office, charcoal drawing of this beautiful, chubby baby, little baby face. It was drawn by one of my Nigerian students who was required by his family to get a degree in economics. And I'm not saying that there wasn't value in his economics degree, but to deny his gift as an artist, okay, I'm in trouble with parents now. Pursue your gift, your God-given gift. There's only one you, and there's something magnificent you were sent here to do.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nelly. Do we have other questions? So feel free to either unmute yourself or you can use the chat box. Yes, Dan.
Ms. Nelly, thanks first of all for a great presentation. This has been awesome. One of the findings that you listed out was talking about more support for families of international students. I guess I'm curious, do you have any suggestions of what those supports will ultimately look like or should look like, or what CCBC can do?
Yes, sir. So thank you for asking. Some very simple things like where to shop for cultural foods, where to worship, a list of communities. Often we find that, if the student is F1 and if the spouse or children come as F2, then they plan to enroll in school. They plan to take some of our continuing education classes. And while the spouse is prohibited from working, they're not prohibited from taking a few courses or taking Con Ed courses. So the family has to land here and figure everything out for themselves, especially at CCBC. The four-year residential institutions, because they have dorms, often I think do a better job of integrating the students in the community. So this is a problem, Professor Damon, that I think all CCBC students have. As a commuter college, we don't always help them connect. And so the drawback home can be economic, it can be educational. Why are you taking that many courses? It's costing family while you should be working. They're associating with friends who don't understand the need for study time. So again, regarding the international families, any community resources we can provide them around, where to worship, where to shop, um, opportunities that are available to them financially and educationally, healthcare, all of those things are huge choices to make in another country, in another language. Wow.
Thank you.
Miss Nelly, do you think like a committee or a group of faculty who went through the same experience with some international background can be possibly created or established in terms of some volunteer work or service work, where they can share their knowledge and expertise, or at least their own experience navigating through the system in the US, because each one of us with a background internationally, I believe, strongly believe, can do that. In my personal life, I did a lot of service, mainly focused on translating within my community, Albanian community, going to immigration courts, doing some service, going to regular doctor visits. So something like this, I think, will be a great initiative at CCBC that can be established and could be one of the main initiatives that we can focus on as a global education program at CCBC. And that's going to give them, I think, a lot of support, and then at the same time, a place where they can go, or at least they know that there's a contact person or there's a place that will give them some advice.
This is wonderful, Professor Intella. This is one of the many reasons why I love working with you. Absolutely. And we've learned it from practical experience. And the researcher reminded us that this peer community, the peer mentoring with someone who's gone through the international experience and then with a domestic student, I thought that was unique to surround the student with as many resources and perspectives as possible. And yes, clearly, the connections to faculty and staff were a huge part of why our own students persisted. Great idea. Something tells me we just created a lot of work for our deep faculty. I'm proud of you.
Go ahead, Kristen. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Hi, good morning. I think you just kind of answered. I was going to ask because you had mentioned the study regarding two mentors, and I was just going to ask if we did that at CCBC. But it doesn't sound like we do, but maybe we will.
It sounds like we've suddenly been drafted. Professor Intella just drafted you, Miss Kristen. I apologize. It just happened. I used to work in corporate America. You know how that works. You raise your hand, you end up with the task.
Yes.
Professor Raymond.
Yes. Hi, good morning, Ms. Natalie.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. I just want to say regarding the model that you're talking about, me and my supervisor, Ms. Erica Harris, have served as co-advisors to our Nepali Students Association. It's a wonderful, wonderful experience, and students learn so much. Given Ms. Erica's background in management and experience in team building, she just do a wonderful job and let the students see firsthand how she's building up a democratic process for students to establish and rectifying their constitution, how to pull out a team, how to execute, how to communicate with student government and student engagement offices. I think the students really appreciate that, and they really learned a lot of skills from Miss Erica. And I just, stand on the side and be the cheerleader for them. Yeah. So I just saw that model really works.
Thank you, Professor Raymond. And you personally have been made yourself available to me when I had questions around culture. So I thank you for your consistent support for our students. And yes, it is important to have someone who is familiar with the student's culture, and then the domestic student who can explain. We can end up in a world of trouble when we do literal translation. I speak a little bit of French, just enough to misunderstand some things. So grateful to you and Miss Erica for continuing to consistently support our students and me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Ms. Neely? Thank you again, Ms. Neely. And speaking of students, we are going to experience a wonderful group of students that are going to join us to conclude our Global Education Symposium. And then I'm going to invite another member of our Global Professional Program Committee at CCBC, Professor Kamadis. It's all yours.
Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to the Global Ed Symposium. I'm so happy to once again be a moderator for, I think, like my 5th year running. It's always such a joy to do this event. So let me introduce our student panel. We have 3 amazing students who will be presenting today. First, Nishat Sayeda. She is originally from Bangladesh and currently a first-year experienced student majoring in engineering. She moved to the United States 9 months ago, a transition that was both life-changing and emotional as she left behind her home, her memories, and her extended family. Academically, she faced challenges when her IGCSE was considered equivalent to a U.S. high school diploma, leading her to begin college earlier than expected at CCBC. Initially overwhelmed and uncertain, her experience changed after connecting with a student engagement leader, which helped her find support, confidence, and a sense of belonging. Today, she serves as a first-year mentor, committed to guiding and encouraging others while continuing to grow academically and personally through her journey at CCBC. Our second student is Salwa bin Shams. Salwa is a South Asian student of Indian and Bangladeshi heritage. She was born and raised in Kuwait and the United Arab Emirates before moving independently to the United States at the age of 18 to pursue higher education. She began her academic journey at CCBC in 2024 and is expected to graduate this month. During her time at CCBC, Salwa has been actively involved in leadership and student engagement. She is a member of Phi Theta Kappa, the Student Government Association, the Student Alumni Council, and the Honors College. She also served in the College Senate and on the President's Access, Equity, and Belonging Advisory Council. In addition to her involvement, she has consistently earned placement on the Dean's List. Salwa has held multiple leadership positions and strives to be a collaborative, team-oriented leader who values inclusion and community building. Outside of academics, she enjoys reading, doing crafts, dancing, and planning events. Her global upbringing and leadership experiences have shaped her passion for creating positive change, supporting others, and fostering meaningful connections. And finally, our third student is Jokobed Guamna, who is a theater major here at CCBC with performance experience in CCBC productions, including the one-act play That Goes Wrong, John Proctor is the villain, and The Christians. She has interned at the Institute of Human Virology in Nigeria's Media and Community Outreach departments, where she gained experience in communication and digital storytelling. And Jokobed will also be graduating this month. So welcome, all three of you, and I hand it over to you for your presentations.
They're all, yeah, they're
yeah.
on the call, but I don't know who was the first one that you presented, so we can kind of like follow that
Nishad?
order. Nishad, you're on the call, right?
Yes, I see her on here.
Yeah.
I am here.
Okay. You can go ahead and then, yeah, you will be able to share, Nishad.
Okay, let me just start with.
You're familiar with Teams, Nisha?
Yes.
There's a
screen
sharing
or window for sharing.
If you have your file open somewhere in your computer, you can use window and select the file from there.
Let me just do screen.
Or you can do screen, yeah, whatever you feel convenient. Yeah. And then there's a little sign in there when you see at the bottom right corner. It looks like a little tiny camera sign where you can click to move into the slide presentation mode.
Oh, okay. That I am.
There you go. Wonderful. Thank you.
So, good morning, everyone. And as you know, my name is Nishat Saida, and I'm really, truly honored to be here today. So let's start. I believe every person in this meeting is an expert on one thing no one else can fully master. It's their own lived experience. And it is through those experiences that we come to understand culture, identity, and the world around us. And I would like to begin with a little piece of mine. So I was born and raised in Bangladesh, and this would be my family back in Bangladesh. As you can see, a traditional Bengali household would be like surrounded by the warmth of grandparents, the care of uncles and aunts, teasing of siblings, endless bickering of cousins, and of course loving parents as well. And then I moved to US. So the transition was of course very tough. And after moving here, I encountered a very different cultural environment, one that emphasized self-expression, individuality. So living between these two worlds has shaped the way I see several things like education, family, success, even myself as well. So today I want to share some of those reflections by exploring the cultural differences and also include the two perspectives that have both taught me something valuable. Let's begin with education. So I would like to start with Bengali culture. So in Bengali culture, education is not just important, it is almost sacred. And it is often seen as the most reliable path towards dignity, stability, and opportunity. And believe me when I say I grew up in a home where this belief was lived every day because academic rigor was extremely high, both at school, at home, competition was intense, and discipline was expected. Um, for example, like before my IGCSE exams, which were major secondary school exams in Bangladesh, I was not allowed to watch television or use social media for 6 months. At one point, I even studied for 16 hours a day. And that honestly was considered very normal. Even my parents would stay awake with me through those nights. That's why in Bengali culture, academic success is viewed as a family achievement rather than solely an individual one. And that collective mindset is one of the biggest cultural differences that I noticed after coming to the United States. Of course, here as well, education is still highly valued, but there is also a strong emphasis on individuality, independence, creativity. Students are also encouraged to explore who they are through extracurricular activities, volunteering, hands on experiences. So, that values I carried from Bangladesh to here with me. And one personal experience that really helped me understand this difference would be that, well, I'm a first year experience mentor at CCBC, and I still remember during my first year when I wanted to work on campus as a FYE mentor, obviously for skills and experience. My father refused immediately. He said, right now, your focus should be on your studies. After you finish your education, you can work anywhere and I can still support you. You should just focus on your studies. So, hearing that, I literally understood him because to him, education was too important to risk dividing my attention. So, and if you go to Bangladesh, you can see that, like, unless necessary, because of financial troubles, you will hardly see any teenagers working. So, eventually, I came to a pact with my dad that if I keep my grades top notch, I can do extracurricular activities. But that's how I got into being a first year experience mentor. And that moment represented two cultures coming together in the middle. And I think that balance is incredibly powerful for me, for my identity. I would say even everyday cultural differences reflect these deeper values. For example, Bangladesh holidays. Like in Bangladesh, as you can see on my slide, there is Eid celebrations and Bengali New Year, uh, Durga Puja, the first day of spring, Poila Falgun. So in all of these celebrations, they are communal by nature. You will see like hundreds and thousands of people coming together to celebrate this at a location. You will see families reunite and gather for meals, and traditions are being shared collectively. So these display our cultural togetherness. But in contrast, we know American celebrations often place greater value on personal traditions and individual experiences as well. And also, they also have a smaller social groups reflecting a culture that values self-expression. Even if we move to family structure and hospitality, family structures in Bangladesh are often much more collective. So it is common for multiple generations to stay closely connected. And I would say that definitely affected my decisions because major life decisions in Bangladesh or in Bengali household are frequently made with family considerations in mind, whereas in US most families have nuclear settings, so young adults are often encouraged to make their own choices, move out, or become financially independent. So, and hospitality, since many families come together to stay together in Bangladesh, hospitality is a great part of our culture as well. So, in Bangladesh, sorry, in Bangladeshi culture, hospitality and food culture reflect these as well. Bengali hospitality is deeply rooted in generosity. Like, for seriously, can you believe refusing food at someone's home can almost feel offensive in Bengali household? So, this is because sharing food there symbolizes human connection. Meanwhile, obviously, in American culture, uh, it is often convenience and personal choice is often valued more. Even if you look at the foods from our different cultures, uh, Bengali food have more spice and home-centered culture. So it is a must in Bengali culture to have home-cooked meals almost every day, reflecting warmth and togetherness. But American food culture, as we know, is diverse and global, reflecting the choice and individuality. So these differences may seem small, but they reveal larger cultural philosophies. I would say neither system is perfect because strong collectivism can sometimes create pressure and limit personal freedom, but extreme individualism can also create loneliness and emotional distance. So I'd just say they reveal larger cultural philosophies to us. One prioritizes community identity, while the other prioritizes personal identity. And lastly, before wrapping up, I would want to acknowledge one thing: gender discrimination. It is true, Bangladesh still struggles with gender discrimination in workplaces, education, and many social spaces. But and yeah, women also face harassment, unfair treatment, and barriers that limit opportunities and safety. But it is also important to acknowledge the progress Bangladesh has made because it has been one of the top performers in South Asia on the Global Gender Gap Index. And it has also made significant progress in women's political empowerment and participation in society as well. That country has had women serving as head of government for many years, which is historically significant. And as we see all the upsides and downsides of both cultures, and living between those cultures has taught me something very important. That is, every culture develops around different histories, struggles, and priorities. And the most meaningful growth happens when we learn from both. When I moved to US, the transition was life changing and it was very tough. And rediscovering myself with those cultural differences has been truly meaningful, I would say. Today, I am trying to carry both perspectives with me and better understand myself along the way. So, I believe as young adults, it is our responsibility that we use our unique experiences for a positive transformation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nishat. Oh, looks like we have a question right out of the gate. Dallas.
I just wanted to comment really rather than question. What a wonderful presentation, and you really were able to show us the two cultures coming together in your comments. So thank you so much for presenting to us today.
Thank you. I'm really honored.
Kristen.
Hi, I was wondering what you thought would be a better way to integrate yourself and others in your position culturally. I I know there are so many different
Yeah,
variables, but how do you think when you um try to assimilate, what would you recommend, people from, CCPC or from the US do differently or help with?
for me personally, I would say, even if you move to another country, when I moved, uh, there was definitely a pressure to blend in with the culture here. But I would say, uh, not forgetting your roots and your home is part of it. Like even if you are here, celebrate New Year on the 1st of January. I also celebrate Bengali New Year during April as well. So forget not forgetting your roots and connecting with it keeps your cultural identity. And at CCBC, uh, if we want to emphasize on these cultural differences, I would say we can organize more such events where we can learn and see other cultures and broaden our perspectives. That would be.
Miss Nellie.
I just wanted to thank you for your presentation and say that I am so very proud of you. We all are so very proud of you navigating cultures, negotiating with dad, getting involved in student clubs. It's a huge leap. And of course, hold on to both of your wonderful, rich cultures. I do. I embrace two cultures as well. So we are so proud of your progress. Please keep going. Thank you for presenting today.
Thank you so much.
Nishat, I'll have more questions for you once everybody presents, but one thing that you said that really struck me, that I'd love to hear a little bit more on is you were talking about hospitality and the difference in hospitality across
Mm-hmm.
American and Bengali cultures.
Yes.
And uh, I actually was writing a paper earlier this year a little bit about hospitality and what it truly means. And there's a scholar who defines it as welcoming someone or something without knowing what you're welcoming. Which I wonder if you can speak a little bit to like how can we create a culture here that allows for that level of hospitality of any student who walks in, they can feel that sense of belonging here. Um, what can we do to help when you're coming from an environment of multi-generational family living together to help you feel like you don't have to suddenly just live completely alone?
Yeah, I would say CCBC has already made many efforts regarding that because as you have said already, when I came here, I was terrified at first, but during my first day only at CCBC, I met with some incredible student leaders who helped me feel welcomed. And for someone who has come with multi-generational family, living here alone or with someone as well, but not with your family is tough. So I would say friendships are what keeps us going as an international student. And for international students, the main advice would be connecting with others rather than just being uh, alone or being terrified of not speaking. Because just speaking up would connect you to a lot of students and peers and friends, like minded peers, I would say. And the hospitality, though it is different, but I would say uh, it is different, but not entirely wrong in any way, because both cultures have difference, but they're both correct in their own ways. While our family, if you, like I said in my presentation, if you invite someone to your home, they're expected to answer you in a polite way, uh, that they will try to make it instead of refusing outright. But obviously, in American culture, it is much more straightforward because they have much more choices. So I I would say these differences make it really meaningful to students who are coming in as well, because not just giving them their kind of hospitality, but American kind of hospitality also makes them learn other things as well and make them better connect or blend in to the culture here. So I'd say that.
Excellent. Intella?
I'm going to start by, on behalf of everyone, I know that I have to leave the floor for others to deliver their speech, but speaking of resilience, courage, hope, you see it today as part of this group of students that are taking their courage. These are international students. I come with an international background. I know how difficult it is to learn a language from the beginning, from scratch, and then do a public speaking. And on top of everything, deliver that speech in front of faculty and staff. So that adds another layer in terms of courage. So I would like to say shout out to all of you for being with us today and then sharing with us your personal experience, your perseverance, your resilience. So I'm so proud of you. That's all I have to say. Your floor is yours.
Thank you, Intella, and thank you, Nishat. We'll bring you back in for further questions later, but we're going to move on to our second student presenter, Sawa. Are you ready?
You are muted.
I'm sorry for that. Can you guys hear me properly?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Salwa bin Shams, and I'm an international student at the Community College of Baltimore County, as well as a member of the Student Association. Um, it's truly an honor to be here today and to share part of my story with all of you. People ask me where I am from all the time, and the answer is never simple. I was born in Kuwait, spent most of my life there, lived in the United Arab Emirates. My family's from Bangladesh, and now I moved to this United States almost 2 years ago. For a long time, I struggled with that question because I never felt like my story fit into just one simple answer. Ethn- eth- Ethnicity wise and culturally, I'm Bangladeshi. That's the culture I grew up with at home. That's the language my family speaks, the food we eat, the traditions we celebrate, and the values I was raised with. But at the same time, I never actually lived there. The experience can feel complicated sometimes. You grow up deeply connected to a country through your family and culture, but you also feel disconnected in certain ways because you didn't physically grow up there. There were moments when I wondered if I was Bangladeshi enough, if that makes sense, because I didn't have the same experiences as my relatives or friends who grew up there their whole lives. At the same time, Kuwait was my only home that I truly knew for the most of my life. I was born there, spent around 16 years there. My childhood memories, my schools, my friendships, and my most of my experiences that shaped me to be the person that I am today happened in Kuwait. But even after living there for most of my life, I also understood that I was still considered an expat. So, in many ways, I grew up constantly balancing different identities at once. I learned very early what it felt like to exist between cultures and places. Then, after spending most of my life in Kuwait, my family moved to the UAE, where I spent another 2 years. The transition also changed me in a lot of ways. The UAE was incredibly diverse and fast paced. And living there exposed me even more to people from different backgrounds, religions, and cultures. It reinforced the idea that identity doesn't have to fit into just one category. I I think growing up in both Kuwait and UAE taught me how to adapt quickly, connect with different kinds of people, and become comfortable in multicultural environments. But the biggest transition of my life happened when I moved to United States alone at 18. That moment changed everything for me. Moving to another country by yourself at such a young age is exciting, but it's also terrifying in ways people don't always see. For the first time, I had to build an entirely new life completely on my own. No parents and my sibling, none of them with me to support me or even just be there for me on the days I felt alone. I had to learn how to navigate a completely different education system, adjust to a new culture, manage responsibilities independently, and figure out who I was outside the environment I've always known. There's a certain loneliness that comes with moving away from everything familiar. You leave behind your family, your routines, your comfort zone, and even parts of your identity that felt secure before. At 18, most people are just beginning adulthood. For me, adulthood started with crossing the world alone, learning how to survive and grow independently. There were moments where I felt extremely overwhelmed, moments I questioned whether I was strong enough to handle such a huge transition, moments where I missed home so deeply that even hearing familiar languages or smelling familiar food would make me emotional. But these experiences also made me stronger than I could ever imagine. They forced me to grow. They taught me independence, resilience, and adaptability in ways I could have never learned otherwise. And most importantly, they taught that home is not always one physical place. Sometimes home becomes the people, experiences, values, and memories you carry with you. Growing up between cultures taught me something important very early in life. Identity is layered. It's made of memories, traditions, languages, values, experience, and so many things. And while that can sometimes feel confusing, it can also become one of the greatest strengths a person can have. Being born in Kuwait gave me my beginning. Kuwait is known for its strong sense of hospitality and community, and I think those values stayed with me throughout my life. Then I was raised between Kuwait and the UAE, which became the environments that shaped most of my adulthood and teenage years. One thing I loved about growing up in the Gulf was experiencing different cultures and celebrations all around me. During Ramadan, entire communities came together. The atmosphere would completely change, family gatherings for iftar, lights decorating the streets, people becoming even more generous and connected. At the same time, because both Kuwait and UAE are so diverse, we also experience celebrations from a lot of other cultures. We would see Diwali decorations, Christmas celebrations, Eid festivals, and many cultural events happening throughout the year. It created an environment where people learned to coexist and respect one another's traditions. Bangladesh, on the other hand, gave me my roots and the deeper connection to family and tradition. Even though I never lived there, my parents made sure I was connected to our culture. At home, we spoke Bengali, we ate traditional food, listened to Bengali music, celebrated everything that we would celebrate if we lived there. One celebration that stood out to me and stayed with me was Pohela Boishak, which, as Nishat mentioned earlier, is the Bangladeshi New Year. It's a celebration filled with music, colorful clothing, food that I would die for, and joy. But beyond celebration itself, it represents new beginnings and unity. That idea of carrying your culture with you, no matter where you live, became very important to me as I got older. Because when you move between countries, one of the biggest fears is losing parts of yourself. You start asking questions like, will I belong to my culture if I live somewhere else? Will people understand me? Or will I eventually lose parts of my identity while trying to adapt to a new place? These are questions many international students and immigrants quietly carry with them. Over time, though, I realized something really important. Adapting doesn't ever mean erasing who you are. You do not have to choose between cultures. You can carry multiple identities at once. And honestly, that realization changed the way I viewed myself. Instead of feeling like I belong nowhere, I started realizing that I belong to many different experiences. That perspective became one of my biggest strengths. Being exposed to multiple cultures teaches you resilience. It teaches you empathy because you understand what it feels like to be new or different. It teaches you adaptability because you constantly learn how to navigate unfamiliar situations. And most importantly, it teaches you how to connect with people from different backgrounds. I believe those qualities are incredibly important in today's world. We live in a world that is more connected than ever, yet people are still divided by culture, race, religion, language, and nationality. That's why this year's theme, Together for Global Change Youth as Catalyst for Positive Transformation, Resilience, Innovation, and Hope, resonates with me so deeply. Young people with the unique ability have a unique ability to create change because we're growing up in a world where global connection is becoming normal. We're learning to communicate across different cultures, challenge stereotypes, and create spaces where people feel included. And international students, especially, play a very important role in that. When you move between countries, you naturally become a bridge between two cultures. You carry stories, traditions, and perspectives from one part of the world to a whole different part of another side. You help people learn from experiences that they may never personally live through. Sometimes simply sharing your story can change the way someone views another culture or community. That matters. Representation matters, understanding matters, and compassion matters. One of the places that truly helped me during my transition was CCBC. CCBC became more than just a school for me. As I was finishing my last few days of college and we had our last few meetings for student government, um, most of us graduating students would always call CCBC as our second home because to international students, that's what it was. It became a place where I felt supported, welcomed, and encouraged to grow. As an international student, having that kind of information environment meant everything to me. Through Student Government Association, Alumni Council, Honors College, and so many other things that I'm involved with that Mr. Damon mentioned, I was able to find opportunities to become involved, grow as a leader, and connect with so many other diverse cultures and friends and peers, so many different perspectives. These experiences helped me realize something powerful. Belonging is not always something you feel immediately. Sometimes it's something you build. All of these experiences helped me grow not only academically and professionally, but personally as well. They help me build confidence and they help me build a community that I will forever carry with me throughout my life. And they reminded me that our differences are not weaknesses, they are strengths that allow us to contribute unique perspectives to the world around us. Today, I no longer see my identity as confusing. I see it as something beautiful. I carry pieces of every place I've lived with me all the time. I carry the warmth and hospitality I learned growing up in the Gulf. I carry traditions and values of Bangladesh. I carry the resilience that came from moving across countries and starting over alone. And now I carry the opportunities and experiences I'm building here in the United States of America. All of those experiences together shape the person I am today. And I know that I'm not alone in that experience. There's so many students, immigrants, and young people who are navigating multiple identities, cultures, and transitions every single day. To anyone who's ever felt caught between cultures or unsure where they belong, I want to say your story matters, your experiences matter, and your identity does not have to fit in one simple category to be valid. Sometimes belonging is not about choosing one place. Sometimes belonging is about is about learning how to carry every part of you and your journey with pride. As young people, we have the opportunity to create a future that is more connected, inclusive, and compassionate than the world we inherited. We have the ability to learn from one another instead of fearing differences. We have the ability to create communities where people feel seen, respected, and valued regardless of where they come from. And I believe that starts with conversations like this one. By sharing our stories, we build understanding. By building understanding, we build empathy. And by building empathy, we create a hope for a better future. Thank you so much for listening to me, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story here today.
Thank you very much, Sala. Do we have any immediate questions for Sala? One out of the gate, Sala, from everything that you're talking about, I love that you have come to this realization of owning all parts of yourself, of owning all parts of your culture. That's very inspiring and beautiful. I wonder if you have any advice, or actually, I guess I have two questions for you. One, you talked early on about this question of the complicated answer to the question of where are you from and also of your identity, right? Do you think your early experiences between Kuwait and UAE made it an easier transition when you came here? And my second question, kind of related to that, is there's plenty of research showing that culture shock is can be one of the biggest barriers for students succeeding at a new college. If you feel like the transition to the UAE helped you prepare to come here, what advice do you have for students who might come here and don't have that kind of intermediary step of experiencing another country before then coming on here to CCBC?
As much as, changing from Kuwait to UAE was a huge change for me, I don't think it helped as much because if you go to see the environment of Kuwait and UAE is kind of similar. The values that UAE has and Kuwait has are kind of similar. The traditions, because it's both of them are Gulf countries, they're countries, Arabic countries, so their food, their traditions, most of it was same. And the only biggest change that I had though was moving away from all my friends because I moved with my family from Kuwait to UAE, and I had the support of my family in UAE, but I didn't have any friends and build friendships and connections outside family like my mom, dad, and my sister. But so when I moved to the UAE, to the USA, sorry, it's much harder just because at least in the UAE I had my family to support me, but in the US I had nobody and I was completely alone. So as much as um I don't think the move from Kuwait to UAE changed like helped me all that much just because it was the change from Kuwait to UAE versus the change from UAE to USA is a much huger change because the culture is completely different, the environment is completely different. There's nothing similar from where I come from, except for if I go to a restaurant that is really good and has really good Arabic food. But yeah, so there's nothing that like is as similar as UAE. But for anybody that is like directly coming from not having to move before, as Nishat said, I think my biggest like strength and ally was connecting. Because initially when I came here, I was in New York for one semester, and the college I went to, nobody would speak to each other. People already had friends that they grew up with, so they were with them. And I just was not able to connect with anybody. And I think like so all I would do was just go to college and come back and wait to go back home and just, be on my phone or call FaceTime my family or my friends or something like that. So I would feel like I have somebody. But when I moved to CCBC, um, I was finally able to meet a lot of people that were from my culture, people that were not even but just welcoming because they, wanted to meet new people. And I think that was the best part. Me joining student government, I gained so many people, so much about so many different things in CCBC that could help me. I got friends that I think I'm going to be friends with for the rest of my life just because of student government. I got a lot of networking opportunities, and I think that was the biggest thing that I can tell anybody, even if you do not particularly like connect, like talking to other people, for the sake of your sanity, maybe just try to connect with people that you think would be from this, even if not people outside your culture. If you find anybody that's in your culture that you think you'd be able to connect to, just go outside and talk to people. And I think that's the biggest help that anybody can have, because even on the days that I'm like really sad, I can call up a friend and be like, hey, like I'm not feeling good today, and they'll be like, oh, do you want to go grab ice cream? And that can change my entire day because I just went out to get ice cream and I was just talking to them about how I was feeling. So yeah, I think just as Nishat said, the same thing, and that's what I would say too. The biggest thing would be try to connect with whoever you can, but also try to stay connected to your roots. If you find events that are about your culture, or if you find food that is really good that is from your culture, stuff like that, try going and having those things, try going and having those experiences, because that can make you feel a little more at home than a lot more like an outsider. But yeah, that's about it.
Well said. Thank you. Do we have other questions for Salwa at the moment? All right, I will have more questions for you shortly, Salwa. Thank you so much for your presentation. I guess we will move on to our third speaker, Jochebed.
Hi, my name is Jochebed Gwamna, as has been previously said, and I'm from Nigeria. Um, I, like Miss Nelly said, was one of those students who thought I had to be in a science program. I was originally a psychology major and then a criminal justice major before I switched over to theater. And I took this huge leap to go into theater, and the world is making a really big change right now with AI. So I wanted to speak on this today. I'm speaking about something that is becoming impossible to ignore and that is the way generative artificial intelligence is reshaping the creative world and how this is affecting artists, writers, performers, and communities across the globe. This conversation is often framed as a debate about technology and innovation and communication and progress in the future. But I want us to look at it through some different lenses because what's happening right now is not just a tech issue, but rather an issue of ethics, labor, identity, culture, and environment. And the cost of the future is being paid for by real people. Now, before I go any further, I want to briefly introduce myself and talk about my family. I'm not speaking about this topic as a programmer or an engineer, but someone who exists in the world of creativity. I'm from Nigeria, a country where for a long time, one of the most popular sayings that we had was that the only things you can be are a doctor, a lawyer, and an engineer. Now they've added computer engineering to that. And I was born in Jos Plateau State, and eventually, when I was 5, we moved to Abuja. But I eventually went back to Jos from my middle school and high school, where I stayed apart from my family. I was in the boarding house during that time period. And it was an international school, so I got to mingle with a lot of people from different countries. Apart from my father, who is a medical doctor in the public health sector, my family is full of creatives. My mom is a baker. One of my sisters writes and does traditional art, while the other one does digital and traditional art. I'm a theater major. I love acting. Uh, so for us and for a lot of other people, creativity is not just a hobby. It's not something that is just fun or something that's just a decoration for life. It is the way a lot of people communicate who they are, it's the way people survive, and it's the way that we preserve culture and tell our truth. For many people, this is how they make a living as well. So when generative AI enters the creative world, it isn't a small change. It's not just a new tool. It's not something that's just here to help. It's a shift that's really impacting a lot of careers, communities, and identities. That's why I believe this conversation is something that's really important, something that matters, especially in education, because this is where values and futures of future generations are being shaped. So what is generative AI? Generative AI is a type of artificial intelligence that creates content like images, music, writing, videos, and voices. It can generate artwork in seconds, it can create poems and essays instantly, and it can produce songs that sound like real musicians. It can create video clips that resemble film scenes. And the reason it can do this is because it is trained on an enormous amount of existing material. It learns patterns from human-made work, things created by artists, writers, filmmakers, photographers, musicians, and designers. And then it produces output that resembles what it has learned. It's often described as being a creative breakthrough, but in truth, generative AI does not create the way humans create. It doesn't have emotion. It doesn't have lived experiences. It doesn't have culture. It doesn't have trauma, love, memory, faith, or struggle. All these things that we've talked about, how important they are to not just everyone, but international students especially. Instead, it produces content by predicting what looks and sounds right and based on what's already absorbed. And then that brings us to my first major topic, my first major issue. The central ethical problem of generative AI can be summed up in one word, and that is consent. That is because the material used to train these systems often comes from the work of human creators who never agreed to be part of it. Their art is scraped, their writing is copied, and their voices are captured. And their work is then fed into a machine that, in many cases, they were never asked for the consent for that. They were never asked if they wanted to be part of this. They're not credited, they're not compensated, and there's no practical way to opt out of it. Corporations call it training their data, but like in reality, it's theft. The issue is not only about copyright law, but it's a moral responsibility. If someone's life work can be taken and absorbed into a system that used to compete against them, then it's not innovation, it's exploitation. We need to understand that generative AI is not appearing in a vacuum. It is being built on the foundation of millions of human beings who were never invited into the process. Visual artists have been among the first groups of people to feel the force of this. Their portfolios were online, and because of that, a lot of times a lot of artists post their works on social media and art platforms so they can generate a lot of views and get noticed. And because it was online and readily available, it became scraped and used to generate, to train these generative AI models. And it didn't just steal the subject matter of their artwork, it stole their style, it stole the brushstrokes, the color palettes, the signature looks that these artists had cultivated. And for a lot of artists, that style is not just an aesthetic, it's their identity, it's their reputation. And it's what makes their work recognizable and valuable. But now businesses can type a prompt and generate artwork in the style of a real person without hiring them. And that changes the entire economic structure of creative work. Because suddenly clients don't ask artists for commissions, instead they ask for something that's like them, generated by a machine. And the machine is only capable of doing that because it was trained on the artist's work in the first place. It creates a system where artists are forced to compete against a tool that was built using their own labor. And because of that, they're losing income, they're losing recognition, and they're losing the ability to survive in their field. But visual art is only part of the story. AI has really innovated. Right now, the entertainment industry is facing a different and, in many ways, an even more disturbing form of replacement. In film and performance, generative AI is being used to create AI actors, AI voices, AI extras, AI scenes, and even entire AI-generated films. And what makes this especially alarming is the issue of digital likeness. Actors are now facing the possibility that their face and voice can be scanned and replicated. A person's identity becomes a product. Imagine being an actor who signs a contract for a small project and then suddenly your face is reused for a completely different production, or your voice is copied and placed into dialogue you never spoke, and your image is being used to create content that you morally disagree with. Their jobs aren't just being replaced, their identities are being exploited. And it's not just actors. We have to remember that the film industry isn't just actors or celebrities, sorry. It's entire crews of people. You have camera operators, lighting technicians, set designers, makeup artists, editors, costume designers. All these people are being replaced by AI in different ways. And it becomes a question of what happens to the entire ecosystem of human creativity when entertainment becomes automated. What happens to the new international students who are deciding to become creative instead of becoming nurses because that's what they were told that they could only study? Music is also being affected. There are a lot of AI generated songs that have been uploaded into streaming platforms like their regular music. And a lot of them do sound like regular music. You can't tell the difference. And some of them also intentionally mimic the voices and styles of real musicians. A lot of people hear these songs and think that it's just a regular person. They add them to their playlist, and sometimes it's added for them. They have no choice about it because things like Spotify use their algorithm to just put it there because it's catching attention. It's not, they don't care if it's affecting other people because music is cheap. The AI generated music is cheap and it's endless and it can be produced in massive quantities. So because of that, the platforms get flooded with content that pushes real artists down and out. So we need to ask the question, what happens to the future of music when the market becomes saturated with artificial content? And more importantly, what happens when audiences stop caring whether the music they love was made by a human or by AI? This brings me to what I believe is the most important part of this entire conversation. The biggest cost of generative AI is not financial, it's cultural. Because AI is not just content, because art is not just content. Art is history, human culture. It's how we have communicated for millennia about our struggles, our identity, our who we are. It's how we communicate our faith, our love, our joy, our pain. Uh, Art is how we say, this is what I like, and this is what it feels like to be alive. Generative AI can imitate style, but it cannot imitate lived experiences. It cannot replace the meaning behind a song written about grief. It cannot replace the truth in a painting made after a war. And when culture becomes mass produced, we risk losing the diversity and depth of human expression. We risk entering a world where art is not created to communicate meaning, but created to generate engagement. And it's not a future that strengthens humanity. It's a future that empties it. There's so much AI slop online that a lot of, if you look at a lot of art that was made in the past few years, especially popular art, you find a lot of it is AI. And people have been trying to speak against that. Another part of this conversation that's really big, especially now, is the environmental cost. Generative AI depends on massive computer infrastructure. It requires enormous amounts of electricity to train models and run them. It requires data centers that are huge facilities filled with servers that operate continuously. And these centers also require cooling systems, which often is a huge amount of water. So every time someone generates an AI image or an AI song or an AI video, it's not something that's just coming out of thin air. It is something that's happening with machines that are consuming a lot of energy. And the demand for that is growing rapidly. Across the US, data centers are being built at increasing rates. There's one, I believe, in Utah where they're trying to build a 10,000-acre data center. And it's been really bad for a lot of the communities where these are being built. These data centers, they tend to be presented as progress, but they instead harm the local communities. They reshape neighborhoods, increase strain on power grids, contribute to environmental damage, and disrupt ecosystems. It's especially concerning because these communities have little control over what is built in their area and little benefit from the industries profiting off their land and resources. A lot of communities have spoken out about how they don't want these data centers to be built, and yet politicians ignore them because this gives them money. A lot of these communities are also being told that, oh, it will generate jobs. But in actuality, a lot of data centers only hire about 23 people once they've been completely built. So if we're being honest, AI feels like it's futuristic, but it's not really futuristic in that it's destroying our planet. There's not really a future if we don't have a planet. It's living a very big footprint, and that footprint is being paid for by communities who never agreed to carry that burden. So why is this happening? Why is AI being pushed into creative spaces so quickly? And the answer is the very easy one that I've kind of already brought up: money. They're not trying to help artists or help artists progress at all. They're trying to cost where they can. Companies make content that is fast, cheap, and constant. They want endless marketing materials, endless entertainment, endless visuals, endless music, and AI can provide that. Businesses don't always care if what they're producing is meaningful. They just want it to be good enough. If AI can replace a creative, it becomes a financial insensitive to do so. And that's why we keep seeing generative AI expand so quickly, because it is profitable to replace human labor. And people being replaced are the same people whose work trained the machine in the first place. So is this really innovation? And if it is innovation, then who is the innovation for? Because the benefits are only concentrated at the top 1%. And the consequences of AI are being pushed onto creatives, workers, and whole communities. So what can we do? What role do we play in this as people in education? I believe education is one of the most important battlegrounds in this issue because schools teach values. Students need to learn that AI is a part of the world that they're going to inherit. It's not something that's going to go away very easily, but they also need to learn the ethics behind it. They need to learn things like, where does the training data come from? Who consented to this? Who was paid? Who does it benefit and who loses from this? We need a lot more transparency. We also need legal protection, but there's not much that can be done about that right now. Creators should need to have the right to consent about whether their work is being used in these training datas. And we need to teach students that creativity matters. Because if the next generation is taught that art is disposable, then we'll build a future where human expression is treated like a luxury. Because it's not something that you have to work to get. And I don't think that's a future that anyone wants. So generative AI is very powerful and it can be helpful. I'm not saying AI is completely bad. It can be helpful. But we can't pretend that it's just a neutral thing. We can't pretend that it's not harmless. But sorry, we can't pretend that it's not harmless. And we can't pretend that people aren't being replaced by AI. And what is at stake is not just jobs, it's human culture, it's identity, and it's the ability of people to survive through the work of their hands, their minds, and their voices. Technology should serve people, not erase them. If we allow creativity to be automated and exploited, then we are choosing a future where culture is generated and lived. So we need to create an environment where these students are choosing to be creative, to choose to be artists and musicians and actors. They have a future in those careers. They're not just taking a chance on something that's going to fail. It's very difficult to leave your country to come to the US, to switch out from nursing and to become a creative when you're not even sure if that industry is going to remain. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jochebed. First of all, let me just say, as your professor for the last many years, it is such an honor to and a joy to see how much you have grown. I was also at a conference last month of community college leadership, and AI was all everybody was talking about. But a scholar named Matthew Desmond, who studies American poverty, was asked a question about AI, and his big input was allow communities to have a say in what AI will do in the future. So I appreciate you standing up and saying what you believe AI should be doing and what it should more specifically not be doing. So thank you for that, Joe. Does anybody have any questions for Joe before I ask a few? Julie.
I just want to commend Jochebed on her presentation. That was fantastic. And it is very relevant and germane to being a student now, to being a student in the performing arts, to being a student who has switched over majors, to being a student who is bicultural, coming to the US and having to decide what path to take. It makes me feel good, presentations like these and recent graduations where we are rightfully very concerned about AI, but the kids are all right. You guys know, that just makes me so happy that it's like, we don't have to convince our students and the young people of just how dangerous this is. Dangerous for their critical thinking, dangerous for their job prospects, etc., dangerous for their humanity. That you guys got it. You got it way better than we've got it. Like, you guys understand it way better than we understand it. And the onus is then on us as teachers and faculty members to create exercises, curriculum, to create things for you that don't include AI and that you can't shortcut through AI, and that, you know, it's not about, oh, students cheating using AI. It's about us finding new ways to develop that, you know, to develop curriculum that still goes back to critical thinking. So thank you so much for pointing that out. I also dropped in the chat, it's very germane, there's a hearing today about opening up a AI data center in Woodlawn. So yeah, even if you can't, you know, people can write in, or I put it in the chat, but yeah, thank you, Jokabad. Seriously, thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Miss Nelly.
First, wow, I'm going to say to you, Professor Guamna, thank you for teaching this old dinosaur who spends all of her time digging in Bibles, cemeteries, and old tax rolls, the importance of this new technology on so many of us. You know, things haven't been good for us since the cotton gin, but you're making it clear to me that this is even more dangerous. I am overwhelmed. Thank you for explaining what data centers are. I'm sorry, I'm a dinosaur. Thank you for when you said the technology can't, what did you say? It doesn't have faith, it doesn't have love, it doesn't have struggle. When I go back to that beautiful portrait, that, you know, charcoal drawing that's on my in my office, hopefully when you visit you'll see it, by my Nigerian student who was required, you know, to study economics. I am blown away. Thank you for explaining the impact of this. And then the historian in me says, there'll be no way to stop it, right? Everything from GMO to you and my grandmothers don't understand why we buy water, right? we have destroyed our own planet with our technology, you know, smokestacks of the steel mills and so on and so forth. What do you think is the best path forward? Because it's not, the clock isn't going to step backwards. Professor, thank you for your advice. We're listening.
So it's one of those things that's very difficult to cover because a lot of, like I said, a lot of big companies are benefiting from this. A lot of the 1% is benefiting from this. So they're not going to want to stop making these data centers. Communities can try to step up and stand up for themselves, but in a lot of places they're being ignored. Like the one in Utah that I mentioned, I believe they signed for it, even though the community was like being very vocal about them not wanting this. In fact, a lot of the community they accused them of being bought out by like China, which is ridiculous, and being like double agents because they're saying, oh, if you're not for AI, you're against the advancements of the country. So it's one of those things that we as a community, as people, need to figure out a way of how can we fix this? How can we solve this? If we stop using AI, would they make it so that these companies are like, oh, we're no longer making money out of it? Even though in truth, a lot of companies who like are based on AI are losing a lot of money because it's not a very profitable business. You tend to lose money. But they're not looking at it from that angle. For them, it's like the instant money that they make from it that they prefer to see, and not the loss that will eventually come from it.
Thank you. 1,000 thank yous. We'll be buying your book. I see streams of revenue for you, okay?
Amen.
Thank you again.
And Jokabed, you're right that collective action, it's hard, but there have been a few hopeful examples. I mean, the Actors Union, the Screen Actors Guild, standing up a few years ago and saying, no, we're no longer going to support contracts that include language where our bodies can be scanned and then be used by AI as extras or generate my likeness, etc. But it's a hard battle. So I'm going to move away from AI for just a quick second, Joe, and I want to connect your lived experience a little bit with Nishat's and Salwa's. So you are an international student. You are actually somebody who had to go home for a year. Going back to what Nelly was talking about earlier, you've experienced some of these. Can you just quickly, as much as you want to share, just tell us a little bit of your personal story as a student and some of what you have actually overcome so that we can celebrate it.
Of course. So I am a bit older than a lot of students at CCBC. I'm already 24. I graduated class of 2020 from high school, and I went to college in 2021 at Trinity Christian College in Illinois. I was a psychology major and I was doing terribly, just generally as my mental well-being. I had a mental breakdown because adjusting was really difficult and I was really on my own for a lot of things. And I came back to Nigeria for a year and then I came to CCBC. A family friend recommended it as usual. Um, and I came to CCBC and I was a criminal justice major because once again, in my mind, I needed to do something sciencey. I shouldn't be an artist. And after a semester of that, I'm like, what am I doing? And then I decided, you know what, I'm just going to take a chance and I'm going to switch. And I remember initially my parents didn't want me to do theater, but then they were like, yeah, if that's what you want to do, do it, as long as you do it well. So I switched over to theater. And it's theater at CCBC was amazing, very welcoming community, awesome teachers. And I made a lot of friends in the theater department, and I love every single one of them. And I was studying at CCBC for the next 2 years. Yes, 2 years. And in 2024, June 2024, my student visa expired. So I had to go back to Nigeria. And it was a terrible time for me because, as many of you are aware of, getting a student visa is very difficult. Even like getting it renewed was going to be very difficult. Actually, before I talk about that, I should say, before I got my student visa for CCBC, I was also worried about that because I was like, oh, I'm going to be applying for a student visa again. And I'm going to be I'm going to have to explain why I dropped out of the first college. I'm going to have to go through all of this. And I remember me and the embassy lady who was interviewing me for it were talking and we both started crying together. And she was like, you're going to do so well in this one. I'm like, thank you. And it was really a very tearful event. And now here I was again going back to the embassy to get a visa. But my family also at the same time, my dad had applied for permanent residence, an EB2. And so we had that going on. My sisters were also both applying for college for the first time. And so there was a lot of stressors in the family. My student visa and their visas actually got denied. And at first we were confused as to why, and then we got called for our permanent residence, our green card interview. And we were very excited. It was very, very big time in the family, but also really stressful. And we got our green card eventually with everything. A lot of traveling was involved to get that. And so now we had to deal with moving our entire family from Nigeria to the US. But because of that, I was able to come back again to CCBC to continue my education, which I'm so happy for. But my family decided to go to Georgia. So I'll be moving to Georgia in the fall. Kind of sad because I'm gonna miss everybody here.
Thanks for giving us the rundown. We'll miss you too, Joe.
Thank you.
Intella.
Let me start by saying thank you to you. Thank you to all our students with your courage and resilience for sharing with us your personal stories. It's been such an amazing experience for all of us, for me personally as well. Going back to your presentation, you mentioned that you had to change majors, you have to make a couple of adjustments. You even went back to your own native country, your student visa was denied, but you re-entered with a different status. I would like to know if there is one thing, going back to all this experience that you shared with us personally, if there is one thing that you want to change, what would that be?
I think I would have been true to myself from the very beginning and chosen theater. That's definitely something I would have changed. That saved me a lot more time and a lot more focus as well, I think, because Another thing that I learned from moving to the US, because mental health isn't really something that we talk about much in my country, is that I have ADHD. So focus is something that I struggle with sometimes. And I think if I had been able to have theater with me from the very beginning, I would have been able to go through things a lot easier back then than I am now, because I do struggle quite a bit now still.
Thank you.
I'd like to connect in our other students and try to draw some connections between some things that you all were saying. Salwa, you were mentioning the importance of representation, and I'm sort of curious to hear from you and Nishat and Jokabed on how, I'm going to put on kind of the AI tech mogul hat for a second and play devil's advocate of like, hey, couldn't AI kind of create an environment that makes you feel more welcome the second that you enter into a space? And what would be your reaction to that, your counters in terms of authenticity? No reactions. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, if I said, okay, so for me, that doesn't really connect with me. If it's with I would much rather prefer human interactions to AI ones. And if you come from another culture or country, the emotions that you have bottled up, uh, it is not as connecting to a AI, obviously, as to a person. So I would rather have connection with the real person rather than AI. And to be honest, that feelings of loneliness or whatever you are feeling at that time is best understood by a peer of like-minded, by a like-minded peer, I would say. So I think that would be my answer.
Joe, you seemed about to speak. Yeah.
Yes. So AI, like we said before, can feel human emotions. So it will give you like the breakdown of like, oh, this is the steps to do to integrate properly into this environment, but it won't give you the best way. And like my sister likes to say, Chat GPT lies to you. It makes you want to feel good. Like it gives you the best output for things generally. And uh, uh, human interaction cannot be replaced by AI. It's like the reason why I stopped using Duolingo, because Duolingo switched to AI, and I'm like, I don't want to deal with that. I like being like have human oriented lessons. Those are good. Um, so there's something about like being with humans that helps us understand things more. AI can be useful, like I said. I know with a lot of people, especially like in the autistic community, people who have like a very difficult time with human interactions. A lot of times people use AI to like help with that. Like I know people who might like send like a picture of like text or something to AI, and it's like, hey, can you help me understand like what this person is talking about, like the emotional thingy, because not everybody uses tone recognition. So sometimes the AI can help with that, but it's also still not the best things. Human interaction is still the preferred method.
Thank you. A more general question for all three of you, coming from your different backgrounds and such. Oh, how was this worded? I wanted to make sure I asked this kind of correctly. What advice would you give other international students as they're coming here to study to gain good work experience, to really set themselves up to allow themselves to be their true selves and pursue their passions here?
I can start. So, from my point of view, as I told in my presentation, it I have always been a studious type of student, not doing a lot of things. Like I was in extracurricular activities back in my home country as well. Uh, I used to sketch and paint. I used to sing, do recitation of poems as well. But that was until eighth grade because after that I started focusing on my studies wholly. So if you talk about like working professionally or being connected in extracurricular activities, I would say starting small, like before going into workforce, maybe start with club activities, and you can go to being a president of the club and gain experience from that, to going to working on campus, like from club activities to on campus working. Because working on campus for me, when I started, the first thought that was for me, because like I told you guys, my views about studies is almost similar to my dad. So education is really really important for me, so I didn't want to work part-time somewhere else where there wasn't any flexibility, where I wouldn't be able to do my studies as needed. So that's why I wanted to work on campus, because that would give me the experience, the skills, and also the flexibility. Because currently, when I work as first year mentors, and whenever I have an exam, I, even if the exam is not at the time of our meetings as FY mentors, I would still tell my coordinators that I need to prepare for my studies, so I would not be coming to the meetings today. So that flexibility allows me to stay on my track and determine my studies and everything. So that step by step, I would say that is the most efficient way, like starting small with clubs, then on campus, then maybe part time, then internships, eventually getting into workforce. Yeah, that would be my answer.
Awesome.
Could you repeat the question for me? I'm so sorry.
Oh, sure, Sala. I was asking, what advice would you have for other international students who either want to gain some work experience or are trying to figure out how to navigate allowing themselves to be themselves, who they truly want to be, and own their identity and pursue whatever career path they actually want?
So the first thing to
Mhm.
like work, the work environment and everything, I think networking on campus is the biggest thing I've done. Just like, because I mean, almost anything that I've done at CCBC, I owed to see SGA, just because I was able to network with so many people just because of it. So I think, yeah, networking, um, looking into the resources in college so much, because until this semester, I didn't know honors was this big. And there's just so much I gained just because of honors. And so yeah, just looking, making sure to like take the initiative to look at all the resources that a college has to provide. Because CCBC has a number of things that students don't even know about. And as somebody international myself, I only knew about student engagement because I met a few people during the first or new students orientation. That's the only reason I knew about student engagement, but I had no idea about anything else until I joined student engagement and started helping other people. So I think, yeah, so I think networking and trying stepping up to help yourself. You don't have to step up to like have short, like small talks, or step up to like, have small conversations, but just to step up to help yourself. Just because, yeah, I think that helped me the most, networking a lot. And the second part of the question, I think, was what was the second part of the question again? I'm sorry.
Oh, just how to encourage international students, and sort of in Joe's case, taking a couple of majors to really then decide, no, this is what I want to be. Are there any piece of advice you'd have for a student kind of struggling with that family tension versus the individual desire?
I think for me, fortunately, I got lucky with my parents. They were okay with whatever I wanted to do. They just were like try to be practical about it. But but yeah, so fortunately for me, I didn't have that issue. But for anybody having that issue, I think our academic advisors or success navigators, just talking to them helps a lot. Trying to figure out, because if you actually don't really want to do something and then your parents are forcing you, it's not going to actually help you with anything. Like it's you're going to be miserable eventually. So maybe try to talk to like the academic advisors, try to speak to them and see if you know the thing that you really want to do is actually going to help you, and if it does, try to sit down and have a conversation with your family. I think that would be the biggest thing I'd be able to say, because fortunately for me, I didn't have to go through that whole thing, so I don't have much of a great advice. But I think something that I was able with friends that I've given the advice was this: I try to talk to an academic advisor and see if the path that you want to do is feasible for you, and if it is, have a sit down conversation with your family, and maybe they can come to an understanding. But yeah, that's about it.
I will
Joe?
say that last bit, it's easier said than done for a lot of people. A lot of like my family was very okay with it. My sisters now are doing like art stuff as well. Um, but there are families that are more strict about things like this, and there are families who, uh, if you try to talk to them about, oh, I want to switch to this instead, they will stop supporting you financially. So it's one of those things where it's easier said than done. Uh, you really need to know who you're speaking to. I think the student needs to also pull in like with CCBC professors and people like the International Student Services for help with things like that. Like, hey, I want to do this and I need to have a discussion. I don't know how to see if they can get some guidance about it.
Thank you for all those perspectives. We've touched on this a bit from each of you, but do you have any other suggestions for support systems or anything that the college can provide or the community as a whole can provide for international students? Joe, I'm thinking about just the stigma behind something like ADHD, anything else in terms of things that we can potentially do better here or in the college community at large?
So this was a very difficult thing for me, and I think just in general because it's hard to get diagnosed in the US because it's very expensive. Even like with mine, I had I forgot the word. The thing that you have to have in the US or it's gonna be very expensive for medical things.
Insurance?
Insurance, thank you. Insurance. I had insurance for a while because before the changes that have been happening with the US government, you could get state funded insurance as an international student. If you figured out how to do it, you could get it. And I did have that, but I no longer have it because lovely government. And because of that, I was able to meet with a psychiatrist and we're able to like go through like everything. And even though I don't have an official documented diagnosis, right? But she was like, okay, these are the things that are happening to you. We know why this is causing this and we can treat it. So I got medication still. But technically I wasn't able to get a lot of the help from the school because I don't have an official diagnosis. I think there's also a lot of stigma in a lot of international families and with a lot of people like that about mental health things. A lot of people probably have ADHD, autism, and a lot of other learning difficulties, but because their families would rather them not get diagnosed, it's a lot really hard for them. They have to like push through with it. They have to create their own coping mechanisms. Even like for me, one of the things I had struggled with is family and family friends saying I shouldn't get diagnosed because it will be difficult for my work. Like it might make it so I don't find a job in the future. Thankfully for me, I'm not in a career path where that really matters. But for some people, it's a real issue. You don't want to be discriminated on because you have that diagnosis. So for some people, they'd rather not do with it. But I also think just being able to talk to like professors and be like, hey, this is what I have going on. I don't have an official diagnosis, but I'm struggling with this. And having that system of people to help, like I've had a lot of teachers help me with things because they can see how I struggle with certain things and they help me. And I love that. And just great community on all.
Sawa?
With the whole insurance thing for the mental, like, talking to somebody about it, I did not have insurance and I was going through something recently. So I wanted to speak to somebody, and I went to our success navigators and they were able to help me a lot trying to, get some help from somebody that is professional, because I think UMBC has like a sliding scale fee thing, and then Chase Brexton Hospital has like a. Now I don't have health insurance, but Chase Brexton was able to do a sliding scale fee thing for me, where like it's exponentially lesser than it would have been if I just generally went without insurance to a hospital. So I was able to get myself checked and everything, even outside of like the psychological help, just like physically, I was not able to go to the doctors for about 2 years. And then when I finally spoke to the success navigators, they were like, oh, like, they might be able to help. And they did help. It helped a lot. So yeah, I think speaking to our success navigators with relation to all of this helped me a lot, because they were able to give me a lot of different resources that I could reach out to be able to speak to somebody professionally and work through whatever I was going through.
Excellent. Raymond, you have your hand raised.
Yes, I just wanted to provide a piece of information to Ms. Wamna that this may not apply to you, but if any of our, non-traditional students